points of view and content on Voices of the Community are those of the speakers and do not reflect those of this station, its management, administration, and the Board of Trustees of the City College of San Francisco. Welcome to Voices of the Community. I'm George Coster, your host from San Francisco, California. Today's show is an update of our two-part show, Homeless in San Francisco. To get more context about our fellow citizens experiencing homelessness, I'd recommend that you listen to our Part 1 and Part 2 show, which you can find on mixcloud.com/Geo Coster. Homelessness is not just a San Francisco issue. In the latest point-in-time count, a one-night census conducted in 2015, there were 500,000 homeless people in the United States. 1 in 5 homeless people live in California, or around 115,000 people. The government breaks down homeless residents in two different forms, the housing crisis and the chronic homeless. Chronic homeless are people who have been homeless for over 1 year. In California, we have 30% of the nation's long-term chronic homeless population, and 70% of those are unsheltered and 30% are sheltered, which is the opposite of the national statistics. In San Francisco, there were an estimated 7,000 homeless people in the 2015 point-in-time count, and 15% are homeless families, which are adults with children. 50% are sheltered in the system of care and 50% are living on the streets. About 1,700 residents in San Francisco are chronically homeless, which is being homeless for 1 year or more with a disabling condition. The homeless crisis in San Francisco is several decades old. San Franciscans have struggled to figure out solutions over the years with various programs to help our homeless community members. In the recent election, San Francisco voters were asked to vote on several propositions to provide funding and services to address our homeless issues. In our update of Homeless in San Francisco, we wanted to provide you insights into the outcome of both the election propositions and the City of San Francisco's work to support our homeless population. Today's show features the voice of Sam Dodge, the director of the Office of Mayor Lee's Department of Hope. HOPE stands for Housing Opportunity, Partnerships, and Engagement.
Sam Dodge, Deputy Director of the Department of Homelessness and Supportive Housing.
Since our last conversation last year, the residents and leaders of the City of San Francisco are trying to address the homeless issue through legislation. There was Proposition C, Affordable Housing Bond Issue. There was Proposition J, Homeless Services and Transit Fund Amendments. Proposition Q, prohibiting tents on public sidewalks.
Right. There was actually a couple more. There was Proposition K, which was a sales tax increase, and there was Proposition S, which was dedicating the hotel tax to arts and to family homelessness. So S and J both passed with well over 60% of the vote, along with C, which is wonderful. And it really does show that there's a strong faith in our successful programs serving homeless individuals, but it also shows that the community understands we need more investments in these programs to scale up to the need.
With the Proposition C, for example, this affordable housing bond issue, the goal is to build homes, and I know the mayor's goal is to try to house 8,000 people in 4 years. So how do the propositions help the team's efforts to actually address homelessness?
Well, it would have been really much more meaningful if Proposition K had passed with Proposition J. And so J had designated how the sales tax increase would have been spent with
so
$50 million
with an
a
actual
year.
revenue stream of $50 million a year.
Yes, and so $50 million a year would have really made a very significant difference. We spend about $50 million a year in the city and county of San Francisco from federal, state, and local sources on people currently homeless. And that's shelter, drop-in centers, outreach programs. That's about $50 million a year we spend. And so we would have essentially been able to double that, which would have been really, really great. Proposition C allows for some funds that had been allocated around earthquake retrofit to be able to use for rehabbing affordable units in our city and county, which will be great. And I think that will definitely help. But it's not going to have the same direct impact that $50 million a year would have had.
And then K was the sales tax piece, which would have derived how much as an estimate annually in funds that would have helped?
It would have done about $150 million a year with 100 going for transit improvements and Vision Zero on pedestrian safety, and 50 million for housing and homeless services for those currently experiencing homelessness. And now it's 27 years. It's essentially would have been over $1 billion bond if it was equivalent. And I think it was a little bit too confusing for people, but the desire was clearly there when Prop J passed with like 67% of the vote. People want this kind of resources invested in these solutions.
So do you think, and again, just, kind of future projection here, but in 2 years with the next round of elections, do you feel like the city, the department, the supervisors will come back together and basically serve up as two different options again?
We will see. I think that, yes, we are dedicated to finding the resources necessary to end this crisis of homelessness on our street. And I think that there's a few paths forward. We're working together with partners in Sacramento on the state of California and what we can do from a state perspective. People should know that California has a disproportionate percentage of the nation's homeless population, especially people experiencing unsheltered homelessness. It's very extreme here, with single adults unsheltered at a rate of about 70%. Of those single adults that are experiencing homelessness, they're unsheltered here in California. And that's unique to California. So there's a lot of space that we can work together with a state government to find solutions. But I think we do want to find local solutions. We pioneered a lot of these best practices that have gone out around the nation, whether it's like supportive housing or whether it's like innovative practices like Project Homeless Connect or navigation centers. And so we've really shown that we can use local resources in effective and creative ways. And with more resources, we can do more. So we want to really make that case again for the voters.
With the passage of C, for example, with this bond to issue $260 million in general obligation bonds, will some of that millions go into the ability to open another navigation center? Because I know there's 6 at least that were planned, and we can get to that in a sec, or retrofit buildings that could become places for homeless community members?
I would love that. And I think that it wasn't exactly envisioned that it would be directly housing resources for currently homeless people. I think it was to help approach some of the affordability crisis in housing in our community, but at levels of affordability that might not be low enough for people experiencing homelessness. But it does help the overall picture, and we will definitely look into creative options to partnering with those funds.
With J, right, there's the initial $50 million and $106 million per year. Will that go into, it looks like it's more transit or focused.
So that was partnered with Proposition K. Okay. So because K didn't pass, J doesn't go into effect.
The complications of San Francisco legislation.
Yeah.
Last we had talked, you had opened the One Navigation Center in the Mission, right? And I wanted to just ask if you could share, how did the first one go? What did you guys learn from it? How is it being improved?
At 1950 Mission Street and 16th and Mission in the San Francisco Mission District, we opened the very first navigation center in March 2015. To date, we've helped over 850 people leave homelessness and come into the navigation center. 80% of the exits have been to stable housing. It's been tremendously successful, and it's been a real source of hope for how we can really align our resources and work together in new ways to find solutions for those experiencing homelessness. This has inspired the mayor and the board of supervisors to look for expanding these services, and there's a unanimous measure passed by the board of supervisors calling on us to open 6 additional sites in 2 years. That's wonderful. We've opened a second site at 2012th Street that can accommodate 93 people. It's been really wonderful having that open. Already 160 people have been able to leave homelessness there. With our exits going to permanent housing, we've been focusing on the longest term homeless, people that are targeted towards federally supported housing, so it's been really successful. We're working on a third to open in the central waterfront area at 25th and Michigan. We vacated a street and are building a modular campus there. It'll be able to operate for 3 years and be able to move to another location after that, which is really exciting. And now we're working on a 4th location in the South of Market district. The Salvation Army has come forward with a great building that's large, 22,000 square feet. It needs a lot of work, so we been working with them to identify private philanthropy to be able to do the work necessary to make the building just a shining star in our system. But it will be able to serve over 100 individuals at any one time and really welcome people in from the street. Hopefully this will all continue with the same track record, so the first two, in serving many, many people each year and connecting them with the services necessary for them to leave homelessness behind.
There was some controversy over the idea of having one of the centers be like a wet house, because that's been one of the thresholds that people have to be sober before they secure housing, and then the idea of a safe injection site. What was the outcome of those conversations?
So currently in the navigation centers, we serve people as they are, and we ask that there be no substance abuse on site, but if people are intoxicated, we work with people. People have substance abuse disorder and they need residential treatment or outpatient treatment to be able to complete their housing interviews and to be able to access housing. We allow people to take advantage of that, and we have direct connections to those programs. But essentially, if people are able to take care of their business and make all their appointments, then really the best practice is to get people into permanent housing, and then they can take on the rest of life's challenges. And so we don't stop when someone's in housing. We keep working with people to remove barriers between them and the successful life. And that's what we've seen when we visited the famous wet housing program in Seattle, Washington, run by the Downtown Emergency Services Center, and that it's permanent supportive housing, and it targets people with severe alcoholism that find themselves repeatedly in the hospitals and sobering centers. And they found great success in this permanent housing situation, working with people and being able to lower the amount that they're drinking, and will even get into recovery and have full abstinence in that setting. And that's a great model. All of our supportive housing is harm reduction in San Francisco, which means that you don't require abstinence. So we're in a unique situation in that we don't have this abstinence-based need for treatment before you can get into housing. So we talked with supervisors about that, and they agreed that that's the best practice. As far as supervised drug consumption sites or safe injection sites, they come under different names. Currently, it's illegal. Under state law, under federal law, under local laws. So, to the extent that legislators want to make that an option that we can use, they need to do the work to make it legal. We've seen that it's an evidence-based best practice used in other countries, Canada particularly close, but all across Europe and in different areas of the world, to really engage people where they are, to help address health issues, and to offer treatment at every turn, because there's small windows of opportunity with people that are experiencing substance abuse crisis, and you need to be there with people to take advantage of those windows. And when people are just completely out of the system of care and hiding from healthcare services or others because of their injection drug use or other substance abuse, then we're not going to be able to take advantage of those small windows that people, have moments of clarity and want to change their lives or reduce their use or become abstinent. So in the future, it would be a really great model. It's not necessary to tie it to homeless services. We have extensive work with public injectors, and they aren't all homeless. I think that supervised injection sites or drug consumption sites would be a great model to approach people's chaotic substance abuse, but exclusively people that are homeless.
So at this point, it's not a priority and part of the navigation centers or your strategy. And besides the fact of the illegality of it on multiple jurisdictions, you'd have to figure out how to legally create a space for that as well, it sounds like.
Yeah, and we're following our Department of Public Health and their kind of deep research and understanding of these issues in the population. They have a large section of their work that's called behavioral health, which is a combination of substance abuse disorders and psychological crisis interventions. And so they are really the experts on this. I often get pulled into confusing and chaotic street situations that often involve drug markets and drug use along with homelessness. And I could see some really great value in finding places for people to be and, making interventions that are effective. Like these have been shown in other countries to be very effective.
You You are listening to Voices of the Community. Voices of the Community brings you critical issues facing San Francisco and the Bay Area. We introduce you to voices of the community who are working on solutions that face our individual community members, neighborhoods, cities, and our region. This is George Coster, your host, and if you are just joining us, today we are discussing how the City of San Francisco is working with the community to help our homeless citizens. Let's go back to the second part of our interview with Sam Dodge, the director of the Office of Mayor Lee's Department of Hope.
So let's go back to navigation centers and transitional or permanent housing. Could you kind of share what the guidelines are for who gets priority for placement in the navigation centers and then from navigation centers into transitional or permanent housing?
So we work with our homeless outreach team and our encampment resolution teams, which work with people on the street, often in our biggest, most difficult encampments, to find solutions for people. And one of the main solutions has been to come into the navigation center. When they're in the navigation center, we're making sure that all options are available to them, and those that are qualified for permanent supportive housing, we are able to route towards that and make that opportunity available to them. And who's qualified, I guess, is the question, which is it's the longest term homeless people in our community and the most medically vulnerable. We're working together to make sure that all our housing programs are aligned on a common platform for common eligibility standards so that we can make progress together. But right now, currently, our federally supportive housing is all for people that have experienced over 13 years in their life with one episode or more of homelessness and have a disabling condition. Heavy, right? But there is quite a lot of people in our community that qualify for that. I think around 500 people right now.
Of the estimated 7,000 or so?
Yes.
Right.
So that's been effective. We also have a priority for veterans that are homeless for a year or more and have a disabling condition. And then we have some other smaller boutique programs that we try to see how we can make available to different people. We have broader work to do to make sure that they're all aligned and following the same criteria, and so that it's very clear and transparent about who's getting preference for housing and why. But right now we have some different programs that have different criterias, but they are transparent as to why they are there.
Back to the mayor's goal of trying to house 8,000 people within 4 years. Where's the effort within Department of Hope and the overall ecosystem of homelessness support?
So we're doing pretty well right now. We're just looking at our year one data right now. And
so it's year one of the 4 years.
Yeah, the 4 years. And it looks like we're on track to house over 800 single adults this year. And I think it was 130 families so far that have been able to get rehoused through our rapid rehousing programs, and another 30 families that were able to access permanent supportive housing, which is wonderful. And I think that that's a strong start. We're on track to have connect over 900 individuals back with friends and family in permanent housing situations. So we're well on our way to serving over 2,000 people through our government programs to reconnect with housing this year. We were able to open up 244 new units of supportive housing this year, which adds up to about 6,500 units of supportive housing we have in our community. Those units turn over at about 10 to 13% each year, which is wonderful, but when we add new units, it always gives us a little bit of a sprint, and we get some extra placements in the year, and so that's wonderful.
The whole idea that 7,000, and you've heard the number, and it appears like we're not making any progress because that was the same number from X amount of years ago.
The 7,000 number is a point-in-time count, so it's a one-night census of everyone that's experiencing homelessness, whether they're on our street or in our shelter, or transitional housing or drug treatment programs or jails or hospitals all over our city, and to have no stable, regular place to call home. Over the year, we know that over 14,000 people touch our system of care in one way or another. The most common experience of homelessness is brief and a one-time experience. We have another section of people experiencing homelessness that have extended long periods of homelessness. This can be complicated by pre-existing conditions around substance abuse or mental health conditions, or those can be exacerbated by this stressful crisis situation that makes it more difficult and unmanageable. We know that over the last 10 years, we've been able to help over 24,000 people leave homelessness through our combination of programs and efforts. But it's not through shelters and outreach and supportive housing that people become homeless. Like, these are the solutions to homelessness experienced in different ways, but the causes are larger macro. Cost of living, the rising rents, and the lack of affordable housing, decades of dramatic cut from the federal government to HUD and affordable housing programs. These are all seen as like major leading factors into what is causing homelessness in not just our community, but communities all across the country, especially up and down the West Coast. And I think that's a good example because both Seattle and LA and San Diego, they all have experienced double-digit increases in their homelessness, including street homelessness. We've had modest rises in the last few years in the single digits, which is horrible and a tragedy because every one of those people that are experiencing homelessness is, someone that I care about, and I want to do all that we can to end their homelessness. I think our historic investments have helped us hold the line where other communities are seeing these dramatic increases. San Francisco alone has about 1% of the nation's homeless population. LA, it's like 8% of the nation's homeless population. Seattle is almost 2%. And so it's bad here, particularly on the West Coast, and I think we can do much better.
Obviously, the propositions didn't pass, and we didn't end up with $100 to $150 million, et cetera. What is still missing? How can people get engaged?
Well, I think that there's individual efforts that everyone can do. Besides recognizing the common humanity with our homeless neighbors and saying hi and just getting to know each other, there's great programs like Hand Up where donors can give directly to people as they express their needs, and that it's mediated between Hand Up and the person to make sure that those resources are efficiently drawn down and help solve the problems. We had these gift cards that Hand Up has, which is really awesome, $20, $25, help people engage in our system. They get this gift card, they come to Everyday Connect and really are able to both direct the resources towards their basic needs and survival needs, but then also kind of be introduced to the whole system of care and great programs we have here to help in San Francisco. I think that there is like a basic fact that everyone should know, that we have a weird housing system in this country where mortgage deductions are automatic, but for those that need income supports or rent subsidies, it's wait lists and lotteries for them. And we spend well over any amount of money that we spend on poor people on the mortgage deduction. Only 1 in 4 people that is income eligible is able to receive a Section 8 housing choice voucher. Tremendously successful program, the best solution to homelessness our nation has ever invented, but just because of the shortage and lack of funding. So talking to your federal legislators about the importance that we end homelessness for everyone and that we provide adequate funding to make that real, I think can be tremendously effective. But also just saying hi to our homeless neighbors and reaching out in effective ways, volunteering with our great nonprofit service providers. These is all real tangible ways that we can help our neighbors every day.
And Sam, you've been the voice of the City Department of Hope. Before you as Bevan, you've been all over the media, especially in this last year or so with the coverage. Everyone knows part of what you do, and this has been really great, but what is one thing about yourself that people don't know?
Well, I have an amazing family, and I have a 1-year-old and a 4-year-old. My 1-year-old's named Willa, and my 4-year-old's named Miles, and you wouldn't be able to dedicate all this time and effort if it wasn't for my amazing wife, Heather. This is really important to us as a family, that we don't have to live in a society where our kids are seeing people suffering on our streets. And I have these long conversations with my 4-year-old about why. What are we doing? Daddy, why don't you go help that person? And I think it's deeper than just a person-by-person situation, that this is a society that we've drawn up rules and ways of being that is maintaining a certain homeless population, and that's just not necessary or desirable or the best of all possible worlds. So those conversations have really re-inspired me lately to redouble my efforts and to do the best we can. I've been for a long time inspired by those experiencing homelessness and how they're able to maintain hope and dignity in this situation and how they are able to turn their lives around. And that's always been a guiding principle to me, is that, no one is a subject of pity and charity, that everyone has rights and something meaningful to contribute to our society. And that as a government and as programs, we need to really assist people to make them the changes they know they can make to live a better life. And so I think together we're going to be able to get there.
Thank you, Sam.
Thank you.
The Department of Hope is also working to match federal health programs such as Obamacare and the VA to provide health services to our homeless population. The city and state have also launched whole person care, health homes, and no place like home programs to try and provide holistic support with wraparound services. Furthermore, San Francisco Supervisor Mark Farrell recently commissioned a study done by the city's Budget Legislative Analysis Department, who found that it is actually cheaper for the city to house people than it is to treat them on the streets because of their need for emergency care and other medical interventions. That's it for Voices of the Community, and you've been listening to the Director of the Office of Mayor Lee's Department of Hope, Sam Dodge, regarding his team's work to provide a hand up to our community members who find themselves homeless. We hope the show inspires you to get engaged in helping your fellow community members who are homeless. This week's producer is George Coster of Voices of the Community at KCSF and KPFA. I'm George Coster in San Francisco, and thank you for listening to this update of our two-part show, Homeless in San Francisco. You can find Part 1 and Part 2 of the Homeless in San Francisco show, along with past episodes of Voices of the Community on mixcloud.com/GeoCoster. And the Voices of the Community theme music is Heliotrope by Blue Dot Sessions.